And a very warm welcome to the Captain's Table podcast, brought to you by CMI, the world's leading mentoring partner for board members, CEOs, and the C-suite of leading international companies. We will be inviting some of the biggest hitters in international business to join me, Giles Morgan, around my very special oak table in the salubrious setting of London's world-famous emporium of extraordinary food and drink, Fortnum and Mason. I will ask guests to share their own personal love of food and the lessons of leadership they have learned in their long and distinguished careers, and perhaps hear of the sort of decisions that might be made around tables that look and feel a bit like this one. My guest this week is Baroness Rona Fairhead, CBE. She is the chair of RS Group plc, a non-executive director of Oracle Corporation, a member of the United Kingdom's House of Lords, and an advisor to CVC. Her CV is extraordinary. From 2017, she served as Minister of State for Trade and Export Promotion at the UK Department for International Trade. She was chair of the British Broadcasting Corporation Trust from 2014 to 2017, and the independent non-executive director of HSBC Holdings plc from 2004 to 2016. She was also chair and chief executive officer of the Financial Times Group Limited from 2006 to 2013, and served as a non-executive director of The Economist newspaper limited from 2005 to 2013. She holds a Bachelor of Arts and a Master of Arts in Law from the University of Cambridge and a Master in Business Administration from Harvard Business School. She was named a Dame Commander of the Order of the British Empire in 2012 for services to UK industry and was made a Life Peer in 2017. She says of leadership, when the problems come, you have to decide, do you run or do you try and fix them? I think I know the answer, but let's find out. Rona Fairhead, a very, very warm welcome to the Captain's Table. Pull up a chair and make yourself at home.
Well, thank you, Giles. It's nice to see you again after these years.
Well, it has been a while. And before we get into the weeds, let me get you probably a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. Do you have a preference?
I'd love some Earl Grey.
Some Earl Grey. Well, Fortnum's do a particularly good Earl Grey.
If they could possibly do a scone with jam and clotted cream, that would be amazing.
Do you know, you're the first person to ask for scone, and I know that we can get that. And also, they have their extraordinary range of biscuits, Toffloffers, pistachio, clotted cream, salted caramel. Do you have a preference? Because we can get that as well.
Basically, anything that has chocolate, I'll go for.
Okay, Toffloss it is. We'll share those together. Enough of this tosh, Rona. You have, as I went in the intro, talked about in the introduction, a very long and very, very illustrious career, particularly in media, but in all sorts of sectors, in banking, media, etc. Just give us the potted version of how did you get there? How did this journey unfold? It's extraordinary.
I have to start with saying that it was not planned. It is essentially a long and winding road. So I started studying law. I wanted to be a lawyer, decided that was not for me. I wanted to be in something that was more commercial and creating something. So I didn't know much about business, but went to Bain. I then went on from Bain to business school, to Harvard, on the basis that the people that impressed me most and had actually helped me most were from Harvard Business School. And I just thought it would expand my ability to think through business problems. And then when I left business school, I wondered what I should do and which industry I should go into, and chose aerospace because I have a rather strange and long and enduring passion for airplanes. And so I went into aerospace.
Sorry, where did that come from? Was there a reason?
My grandfather was an engineer on Lancasters in the Second World War. And he took me up when I was 6 years old at an air show. And I...
In a Lancaster bomber?
No, God, no. No. He took me up in one of those one of those little planes they do at air shows for little kiddies to ride in.
Oh, wow.
No, a Lancaster bomber would be beyond amazing for someone like me. But that was it. And I got my pilot's license eventually, and I love flying. So I went into aerospace, loved aerospace, worked for British Aerospace and then Bombardier. Did strategy jobs, then I ran businesses for them. And then I got to a stage which was one child, very difficult to combine commuting to Canada and running a business there with the life in the UK. So I then had to change careers, moved to ICI, big chemicals company, great industrial heritage. And then from ICI moved to Pearson, and basically every road seemed to lead to Pearson. They thought I'd get on with what we did, which was education, media, and books, and an amazing management team and an amazing set of values. And I did. I went there. I stayed there. I was foolish enough to get diagnosed with cancer in 2010, and so for a while I had to take a little bit of a back seat. Ended up with me, wrong time, wrong place. So I moved on from Pearson. Wanted to do something sort of significant in the public world, and was approached by the BBC to be its chair and to do the charter review. Did that. Then I was about to go back to the private sector, and I was asked to become the UK trade minister for the country just post-Brexit in the Lords. And I thought that was another opportunity that I would regret if I did not take it. And I went there, as I promised, for 18 months, and then it was on the basis that I would return to the private sector. So I've done that, and I'm now on a group of boards, and I work with startups and all sorts of businesses. And through that time, I also sat on a lot of boards, both public and government, including HSBC and Pepsi, both of which were phenomenal.
You've got the airplane thing. I mean, you couldn't plot that course as a navigator in terms of that as a career.
No, I think they may take me down for being on some sort of substance, but no, it was and I think that's the thing about career. I mean, my view was you always go, you always are seeking new challenges. You always want to be giving. And increasingly, as you go through life, you want to be doing rather than just being. And I think that has sort of guided my life, and particularly my career in the last few years.
And would that be your advice to young people, is that, of course, you want a plot a course in terms, maybe go to university, maybe find a sector, and to have fairly precise aims of where you want to go, but not to be too didactic in the direction so that you have the flexibility to move? Is that something you'd reflect back on, given the way that your own career has moved and ebbed and flowed?
I think I was somewhat unusual for my time, because a lot of people went into a role and stayed there for their entire career. I think it's almost required now for the younger generation. We have 3 children that in their mid to late 20s. I see their life where they move to the thing that they're passionate about. And what I've always said when people say, "What's your advice?" The first thing is, it's your career, it's your life. You have to do what's right for you, and don't let anybody tell you that you can't do this or you can't do that. Take advice, but you have to live your life and take personal responsibility. So you can get a lot of help, but you're the most important person. And then I say it's relatively easy. It's A, B, C. So A is you aim high. You're always looking for ways to take a little bit of risk, not a stupid risk, but a risk that will advance you or help advance a business or something you care about. And you therefore will fail. That's what you have to get used to. You will fail, and there will be times when things don't go well for you. And it's about how you pick yourself up and keep going. The second is B, which is be true. And the more I've been involved in business or the public world, the more integrity and the values of treating people properly, not doing something you wouldn't do yourself, always going for a big, brave innovation, always be talking about growth and positivity is critical. And being true also means that you have to build that connection with people. You have to be able to create followership as well as following leaders when it's appropriate for you to follow leaders. So be true. And the final C is commit. So if you say you're going to do something, you do it. If you decide to change course in your career, you give it your all. And commit to me also means committing to yourself what matters to you. I was very lucky in my early career when I worked for Bombardier. We had a whole week and a whole day was spent about the balance between personal and professional life. And I remember the lesson the rest of my life, which was you can't have it all. You can't have 100% career and 100% your hobby or 100% your family, whatever matters to you. But we are lucky enough to have options. So you decide what matters to you, be sensibly realistic, and then you keep those boundaries and you don't break them. And frankly, after my cancer diagnosis, when people said, did it change the way you looked at the world? I said, actually, no, because of that clarity that I was given when I was I was very single at the time, and no children, but it has essentially helped me lead my life in a way that I feel happy as I come through.
That ABC is wonderfully simple and concise. And I can see where you are a leader and that is inspiring. I wonder where that inspiration for leadership came from you when you were that younger woman. Were there mentors? Were there people who taught you some of this? Is this something that you picked up as you observed others? What, as you reflect backwards, who are the people who helped you go forwards?
Oh, I think you get helped, and you also have to thank your luck all the way through your life and career. In terms of mentorship, I started working sort of in 1983. I'm not even sure that was a known term, but what would happen would be you would have a boss, and there would be somebody that you'd make a connection with. You talked about things that mattered. You were curious, and you sought help. And I was very happy with people I trusted to just, even after I'd stopped working with them, just pick up the phone, say, can I just get your steer on this? And they in turn would not just help me, but then they'd pick up the phone and start proactively saying, have you thought about it, what you're going to do next? Have you and I look back at a number of people that took me aside, a number of people I felt comfortable enough to talk to, and there is no doubt in my mind that they were mentors to me. And there is no doubt in my mind that some of them went beyond just being a mentor, but being a sponsor. And the difference that I see in the two is a mentor is there to help you, to counsel, to guide you. A sponsor is somebody that knows you and thinks, actually, this person, and will go to somebody else where they think there's an opportunity that you would be great at, and they will actually bat on your behalf. And so I have had that in so many ways. And the luck comes from things like you happen to be sitting beside somebody at a business dinner or an event, you get on well with them, you arrange to have a conversation with them with nothing expected on either side, and it develops. And serendipity of life is something I think is very often understated.
Yeah, that's a constant theme, and one of the questions I ask, and you already answered it, which is, are you lucky? And it seems to me that there is a quotient of luck for everybody, and to deny that is self-denial.
Oh, I completely agree. I mean, I would not. There are so many strange connections that happen in life, and I think which goes back to some of my values things, which is be true, because if you are not yourself, if you are not somebody to be trusted, if people are a little bit questioning about your political motives, if you sort of scheme and plot, I'm not sure you have those enduring relationships through life. And so there is nothing that gives me greater pleasure than somebody I worked with or said something to 20, 25 years ago saying, you have no idea how that changed my life, because so many people have had that effect on mine.
As one is fashioned and shaped by others, and you talked about the ladder and those that you watched and observed, were there memories of leadership styles that you perhaps encountered or have encountered in your career that you vowed not to emulate, i.e. people that you thought that is not how to do it?
I think in business and as in sport, you probably learn more from crashing and burning than you do from doing swell. So absolutely, I have even some of be critical, but not in an unpleasant way, and in a constructive way. When you're thinking, so I had CEOs who I thought were 85% unbelievable, but they would have 5 to 15% that you would say that was just dang wrong, and I won't go down there. So I think that the sort of the standout traits that I would push against would be bullying and harassing, humiliation, saying one thing, but within the next breath, going completely counter to it, and being, and I know authentic is the vogue word at the moment, but to my mind, it's be true in both the substance as well as the style of what you say. So I've had that, and those I've absolutely vowed. Others I've learned from, and these are really painful experiences. The most painful experience I think you have in business is, to make someone redundant or be made redundant. And I have seen extraordinary degrees of callousness in that. And I think it's your duty as a leader to make the right long-term decision for the business, yes. But if that means that some people can't be in the business, treat them with extreme respect, do whatever you can feasibly do to try and help them on to their next stage. And if it at all feasibly possible, do the hardest bit as management yourself and face it yourself. Don't hand it off to HR or somebody else to do. But let's not, I've had a lot of sleepless nights, but I'm very clear that mine is not the worst of the pain in that situation. But I think you need to have that I think was a very lasting, permanent pain in mine when I watched how people were treated by others.
This season of The Captain's Table is brought to you by global mentoring organisation CMI. CMI is the world's leading mentoring partner for group CEOs, group CFOs, and senior executives, delivering mentoring for leaders by leaders. With a depth of expertise that's unmatched, they specialise in accelerating leadership performance and impact in the world's largest global companies. CMI's mentor roster is made up of chairs and former CEOs of some of the biggest and most complex international organisations. So whether it's navigating the complexities of stepping into new senior leadership role or making strategic decisions under scrutiny, CMI's seasoned mentors provide confidential, tailored guidance to steer you towards success.
Shifting tack a little bit, and something you mentioned a little earlier was, traditionally, perhaps 20, 30 years ago, people often would enter an industry and stay there, and they would work their way up, and they would be, and in fact, the common link that you and I have of HSBC, many of the people who've worked at HSBC were what they would be termed as lifers, which is seen as a great advantage. They've been there as young managers and worked all the way through to many cases to the top of the business. But the world has changed. You've been very involved in technology. Media is obviously at the forefront of technology in any case. And I wonder, in a modern world of leadership where we talk about choices and young people, it seems that the spectrum is far broader, that the ability to discover through search engine, let alone anything else, is almost infinite. What do you think the qualities are for future young leaders are in a very switched on, always on business? In a world that is always switched on, do you think the basic fundamentals of leadership and business leadership change, or do you think it's the same?
I think life's changed and the lifestyles change. I think the speed of change and the need to keep current has massively increased. I think the pressures on a new generation are much greater, in the sense of always on, extraordinary access to information, extraordinary ability to be exposed for wrongdoing, and so there are a lot of pressures. Equally, it is an extraordinary world, and I would love to be going into this world because the opportunities are extraordinary. I mean, I think the values need to be absolutely grounded. But if you look at what the principles that I would say are, is you've still got to know what it is that you're doing, why you're there, and where you're going. And I think, there's a sort of a saying that if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there, or biblically, where there is no vision, the people perish. And I think that's really true. And I think with all of the noise and the technology, you've got to keep grounded. You've got to say, actually, this is where we're going. This is why we're going. This is why we're doing it, because this is how it will help the customers or whoever it is you're wanting to provide a service or a product to. And these are the key things we need to do. So you still need to be very clear about where you want to go. You still have to have an amazing team around. The best piece of advice you could ever be given in business is surround yourself with extraordinary people that work in a team, because that in the past has been amazing. And I think with new technology, I watch the way the teams at Oracle create things, for example, around healthcare, with the new investment in the healthcare capabilities, and how that is opening up the most extraordinary advances for doctors, for research, for effectiveness. And it's actually exhilarating watching. They know where they're going. They have the tools. They're collaborating. They're top notch. And what can be achieved is glorious. So fundamentals don't change. The speed does. The technology does. But keep grounded on what it is you want to do, who you want to be working with. And then the final thing, words are very nice, but I go back to that commit thing. If you really want to succeed, you actually have to achieve it. And that means you have to be pretty rigorous about making sure that the processes and the outcomes are coming through. So performance matters.
Listening to you now and knowing that you're a mentor with Chair Mentor International, I think I'm going to lead the witness. I get the sense that you probably love mentoring a bit, don't you?
I love it. I absolutely do, because I think there is nothing better than helping people who are curious, bright, ambitious for the business, not just for themselves, ambitious for their teams, and helping them in any way that I can achieve what they want to achieve. And it's one of the most fulfilling things that you can do.
Well, it is wonderful, and I think one of the things about being, as one gets older in one's career, and you see the next generation of kids coming through and having that inquisitive nature and their time to succeed. It is a joy to give back. Before we move on to the next section, I just wondered, within this career of yours, is there anyone that you would like to or never really said thank you to in your career that you wish you had? Someone who had, when you reflect back, was someone that really did set you on your path?
I can go back to school. One teacher who, when Miss Waring was her name, I think I did go back to the school to thank her. But when there's a time at any kid's age where they think maybe they've taken off more than they can chew, and she just gave me the confidence to say, you just can do it, just ignore them all. So Miss Waring, I would. In business, there are so many. I try to say thank you. I think that's a good Scottish upbringing. But I think it's probably, I haven't actually said it to him personally, but Dennis Stevenson, who is the chairman of Pearson, who helped us embody. Pearson, as you know, was founded by a chap called Whitman Pearson, and he had these rules. And I somewhere between. I've said thanks plenty of times for Marjorie, but Marjorie Scardino and Dennis were the two, and they had these values of brave, imaginative, and decent. And it came way back from Whitman Pearson, who had the rule that you never asked anyone to do anything you wouldn't do, which meant that he did the Holland Tunnel underneath the river to New York, and he went in the first tunnel borer and got a terrible case of the bends and almost died. But he did it before anyone else did. Always treat people the way you treat yourself. And he built railroads, but he did schools and hospitals every 10 miles because he wanted the families to stay together, and always go for the boldest new innovation. Like, he was one of the first investors in the earliest form of BA. And Dennis and Marjorie brought that down to today: brave, imaginative, decent. They behaved like that with me. They gave good counsel. And they were selfless in their support of others. And so I would like to say thank you to them. And probably, and this may tickle you, a little thank you to Willie Purvis, because Willie was a great chairman of HSBC. I did not overlap with Willie, but if anybody can just say a quiet word and be a terrific source of wisdom, it's Willie.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I remember when HSBC was sponsoring the Rugby Sevens in Hong Kong, and then that started again. He was brought over by the then CEO, Stuart Gulliver, to sort of commemorate Willie's extraordinary influence on the bank. And I remember talking to him, and he said to me, "How's the Sevens going?" And obviously it's a big party in Hong Kong. And I said, "It's going very well. And all the clients and all the guests are having a lovely time." He said, "And make sure you're at your desk at 8:00 in the morning on Monday." And he was known for that.
Oh, he was hard.
And he was hard.
Yeah, he knew what it was about. It wasn't there just to have fun. You were there to help the customers and deliver what you said you'd do. Absolutely spot on.
100%. Rona, we're at Fortnum's. We're in the world-famous Diamond Jubilee Tea Salon, and we're munching on biscuits.
It is glorious, isn't it?
It's a great spot. You've been in business for a while. You've sat around many tables, lunches and dinners where often the fine details and the final moments of business deals are put together. Do you have a favourite restaurant that you've done business in? Is there a place that you go to or a place you've got happy memories of?
I think in terms of, I'm just trying to think, I think that the happy memories, remarkably, because I only had 19 months as a trade minister, were some of the dinners, informal dinners, that were done on the back of meetings with senior ministers of other countries or the heads of state. And I tell you why. It was because you just realize that everybody is just a human being. But you also learn that business is super powerful and really important, and that was why I was there. But equally, the power of having something over your head that says member of the UK government or whichever country you're part of, the level of respect in which the country is still held, what you can achieve, is extraordinary. And I can remember I got on particularly well with one head of state. It was pomegranate time, and I still get the odd box of the most ripe pomegranates from a very formal walk down the lakeside to a restaurant. So they're moments with people. It's not, I mean, I love my food, but they're moments when you just realize how small the world is, but also how important the UK and government still are.
And do you think that's why business meals, or this is public service, but same idea, you're representing someone that you're working for, but do you think this is why business meals are so important, because it actually brings humanity back into play?
I think it does. I think people relax. I think you can have, you can find out things that you won't abuse, but just about what makes people really tick. And sometimes there will be situations where it's a total blocker and no one can find the solution, but actually during the course of the meal, it turns out because there's a particular project that's going on that they couldn't talk about somewhere else, and they'll hint at it, or it's something to do with a health condition, or it's something to do with where somebody is, or it's just that we haven't been talking the same language. And somehow food and just informality allows people just to realize that you're just people and you should just work it out because you both want to do something.
Are you a keen cook?
I used to be. I am blessed with having an extraordinary husband who takes who does the most extraordinary cooking, as do my children. I am the barbecuer of the family, and so if you ever popped over, I probably would give you a barbecue of whatever type you want, vegetable, fish, any meat, any marinade, and then pudding, because I do love my puds.
Quite right.
So a lovely crepe Suzette, freshly made, or the chocolate nemesis from the River Cafe cookbook.
Oh, the chocolate nemesis sounds good with a big sort of ribeye. That sounds good. And if you had, other than me, which would be your guest of honour, but other than me, who would say be your top three, dead or alive, just people that you would wish you'd either had or you've met, but would be your dinner party guests that could share your the nemesis and steak?
Okay, so I've got three. I think I would have to say Nelson Mandela. I think he was the most extraordinary leader. I can remember, I mean, everyone knows his story, but I can remember taking my children when they were quite small to Soweto, when we went around the townships and we saw the Regimini Mundi church, which had been the heart of the student uprisings and a number killed. And we met the warden, who was had been with Mandela at that time, had been in the student uprising, and all he was thinking about was peace and reconciliation. He'd lost most of his friends, and I said, actually, one of my kids said, "How are you that open to not exacting revenge?" And he said, because Mandibi asks us to do that. And I just thought that was just extraordinary courage and leadership. So definitely Nelson Mandela. I would invite Wheatman Pearson, because I've heard so much about his values and I would love to meet him and check them out. And then the final person, and you probably never heard of her, but I would love to meet her, is a woman called Beryl Markham. And she wrote a novel called West with the Night. And she was an extraordinary woman who went out to Africa, broke all the normal social bounds, learned how to fly a plane, was the sort of the mail deliverer and then intrepid adventurer, knew the whole team from out of Africa, went on the safaris with them, went into serious horse racing, and she did what she wanted, how she wanted it, and lived a free and fulfilling life.
Well, that sounds like one hell of a dinner party. I'll make sure I scrub up for that. That sounds wonderful. Very. Rona, we're going to come to the final part of the show, which I call the Captain's Broadside, where I just ask you some relatively random questions away from the boardroom, away from the barbecue. Do you have a fan passion yourself? Are you sporty? Are you musical? Have you something that takes you away from the serious side of life and so engages your heart?
I'm pretty much all of the above, but I love my sports. I love my flying. You've worked that one out. But skiing, any games to do with the ball, you'll have me there. You'll have me cheering. I just came back from the Euro finals. I love the rugby. I'm passionate about sport, but equally, I'll go to the theatre. It's another major passion. I think we are blessed, and I feel blessed to be living in a country where we have that richness of culture. And I also just love theatre and sport because it's something I can carry on doing with my family, which is at the heart of my life.
And it's content and it's always drama, whether it's sport. You never quite know what's happening. But I think your parents were Scottish. You were brought up in, I think, the north of England. Are you a passionate Scottish fan on rugby and football?
I am a passionate and very tragic fan of the Scotland rugby team. But because I was actually born in the Lake District myself, I give myself latitude to support England in other sports. But for the rugby, it's Murrayfield and the Scots.
And do you remember your first album that you ever bought?
Oh God, I had some very weird tastes. I think I went up to Newcastle to watch Thin Lizzy. And so The Boys Are Back in Town, I think whichever album that was on was probably the one I did first.
And if you were either in a karaoke hall or in the shower singing to Abandon and just letting yourself go, do you have a good voice, and what would you sing?
I have the worst voice in Christendom. I am the only girl in my school who was forbidden from being in the choir by Mrs. Woods, because I couldn't even mime Noises Still Came Out. So you just don't want any song that I am anywhere near, because it would be destroyed.
Is it fair to say that Mrs. Woods would have less of a glowing report of you compared to Miss Waring?
I think Mrs. Woods' comment to me was, Rona, why don't you not come to choir, but go out to the netball pitch, because I'm sure you'll be much more useful to the school if you shoot baskets than aim to keep quiet in our choir. So yes, I think very good memory there, Giles. Yeah. But she still remembers me.
Oh my! And I would imagine, given what you were saying about your grandfather, is that, you know, your love of aeroplanes, which I do understand and I imagine will be for life. Did you have the same affinity with cars? Do you remember your first car, that sense of independence? Did you have that same sort of, this takes me away and into the big bad world?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I had a Ford Escort, which was my grandfather's car. So it all tied back to him.
And I dare say it was your favourite car of all time, I imagine.
It broke down too often. I fell out of love with it too. So,
Oh no!
But it's actually funny. You talk about the sense of freedom, and I can remember that when I did my first solo in the plane, and I did it in Australia actually, and this chap came to me and said to me, you know, it'll be up there, the first solo with your marriage day and the birth of your first child. And I thought, oh my God, this guy is really smoking something. And it wasn't quite up there, but it's very special. It's the sense of freedom, but with control, and that and then about boundless opportunity.
How old were you when you got your license?
Oh, it was after business school, because I wasn't rich enough to afford to do it before then.
Well, freedom with control seems like a very apposite way to end this, and certainly as a guidance for, I think, for many of the mentors and the people that CMI want to lead, but also the people that you lead. It's just been a masterclass, if that's the right politically correct expression, but I'm going to go with it. It was a masterclass, and I am so grateful that you've been able to join me. I will be also sending you your favourite biscuits by Thornton & Mason's by post, old school. But for now,
Thank you.
Rona, thank you so much for joining me on the Captain's Table.
Real pleasure. Thanks, Giles.